Today we're going to talk about a part of a PD's job that usually the PD hates it and typically the jock usually doesn't like it either. And no, I'm not talking about firing. Hey Buckaroos, welcome back to Music.com Academy. Today we're going to be talking about air checking. I get a note from a friend of mine and they said, hey, you know, we've been watching your lessons and you really haven't done anything on air checking. And that's true. And I was like, yeah, you know, I probably should do it. Tough part about it is I've been really wanting to do one about air checking, but I really wanted to do an air check session, but that sort of maybe embarrasses somebody to actually have their air check session done. You know, it's on the internet forever, you know, and all that sort of stuff. If you'd like me to do one of yours, you know, it would be great to have like 4 or 5 people where you can just go a few breaks into them and just point some stuff out that at least comes to my mind. Send me an email and we'll figure out how to actually get your air check to me. But this is not going to be playing an air check, but I'm just going to be talking about air checks because I really had to think about them. And, you know, in the midst of it, which was kind of neat, I actually thought of a couple things that, yeah, I never did this, but I'd actually do this. Now, let's start off with air checking. You know, by the PD, it's a really interesting area because, as I mentioned, usually, you know, PDs aren't real thrilled with doing them. A lot of times they get tasked by the manager or a national PD, hey, you have to do a certain amount of them, or you think you need to do a whole bunch of them. And I've seen so many jocks that don't like air check sessions at all. So, you know, you're kind of walking into that right out of the gate. So bear that in mind, especially if you're a new PD, and a lot of this is going to be directed at a new PD, okay? If you're, you know, a PD within the first couple years of being a PD and you've only been a jock for just a few years, you're really the person I'm talking to at this point, okay? To tell you some things that you should know and also to maybe dispel some myths that you might have in your mind that, you know, aren't really correct. So let me tell you about me, you know, as a jock, you know, and then we'll go into me as a PD, okay? Because you can get both sides, and that really has an impact, both sides doing both of those jobs. Okay, so when I first started out in radio, I don't think I ever had an air check for the first 3 years I was a jock, and I'm working at a radio station on the air, no air checks, like none from a PD. However, as I had mentioned, you know, many lessons back, I used to do air checks almost every day, and they were like brutal air checks, but it was our friends. It was me and 2 other guys, you know, who we both started the station together. We're starting out, we have no ability, we don't know anything about radio, but we're air checking ourselves, and we are incredibly picky and, you know, forcing each person like, what was that? What do you think? You know, stuff that a PD could never say. So I was getting air checks every single day, but they were very safe air checks, like I mentioned before in the earlier lessons, because it's my friends. And, you know, after one person, you know, wails on me, now it's their turn for their air check, and it's my turn to wail on them. It was a really good way to get, you know, good way faster, okay? But as far as a PD during these years, I had no PD give me an air check, none. That seems absurd now, but that's the way it was. Then I got to a medium market and, you know, a couple medium markets, and I had like, I don't know, a couple air checks. At one station I only had 1, but then I was only there a month, and then I moved on. And then I got to a major station in Detroit, obviously CKLW. And when I got there, I had like maybe 1 or 2 air check sessions right in the beginning, which is the right way to do it because I'm new and someone there, the PD, is teaching me how to do the format and what they expect. That's like a given. You know, when you're a new PD and you go into a radio station and, you know, you have a whole new staff and they're looking at you going, you know, well, okay, boss, well, what do we do here? You know, you're altering the format or you're keeping it going or whatever. You need to go through, you know, each one of the staff one by one and do an air check session, maybe do 2 or 3 early on, within the first 2 or 3 weeks to let everybody know, you know, I'm not saying really picky, you're more explaining, this is what I want. This is, you know, this is the station I envision in my head, and you're trying to get them to hear the radio station. You know, so it's like, you know, half major conversation, half air check session. It's almost like the air check session isn't really even a part of it directly, really, except if you find something in there that you don't want them to do, you're going to go, okay, well, hey, you used to do that. Well, let's not do that anymore. We're going to be doing this type of stuff, okay? Then you're trying not to make it negative. You're just trying to pointing out directional change. We're going this way, you were going that way. And as I mentioned before, also, sort of like an Aircheck session, but not in the literal sense, you're going to have some jock meetings where you're going to ask everybody to, start throwing out things. What did the last PD or the PD before that or even the PD before that, what do you expect you're supposed to do when you're in that control room? Tell me now. And then as somebody brings things up and says, well, we do this, on the top of the hour. I'll make this up. We do this on the top of the hour. And you go like, okay, perfect. That's great. Love that. Keep it going. Okay, anything else? Yeah. I was told that we're supposed to, say this, around when we have women artists. Again, I'm just making that up. I don't even know what that would be. But, and you'd be like, well, what were you supposed to say? Well, we're supposed to point out this. And it's like, whoa, dude, no, we're not doing that. Okay, everybody here, we just say, when that comes up again, erase that from your mind. We're not doing that. And you want to go through and get as many possible things as you can from the last PD, and a whole bunch of PDs, because this may go back 10 years and it may be like somebody may be doing something from six PDs back. And you don't want them to do it. So basically you have to set the tone and you have to set this is what we're doing now. We're doing this type of stuff, in many instances, very, very specific terms. It's like an Aircheck session for everybody all at once, but one of the good things about when you do that, you usually rarely have to bring up any of that stuff again as a negative or anything else in an actual Aircheck session on the one-on-ones, because they already know. They already know they're not supposed to do it. Maybe you might remind them a little bit. Hey, remember the meeting? Yeah, so here, this thing. Oh, okay, boss. Yeah, got it. Okay, so that's sort of I guess what I'm trying to get across here. That's sort of the tone you want. You want to make doing an Aircheck with people, your jocks, a safe place as much as humanly possible. Again, when I got to the majors, and for all of the majors, every single city, every single market, it didn't really matter, every single PD, I had virtually no Airchecks. But, and this is another part of this, you're at a major radio station. All the people have got a lot of experience. They're all doing, grade A level work. They don't need really full-on Aircheck sessions unless they're doing something bad. And then for sure you're going to have to do an Aircheck session, because it's like you want to catch it and end it quick if it's something really bad. It's all minor stuff. Usually you can catch that stuff in conversations or in the hallways or things like that, and I'll explain that a little bit more just coming up. Again, there's some shows where like a morning show, you might the morning show might do their show, and then everybody gets together afterwards and dissects what went on, what was good and what was bad, and that would be like a daily thing, or maybe every few days or something. That makes total sense. And there are instances, and many instances actually, where like a morning show where you might want to do that. I could see where you might want to do that possibly if you have the right rapport with the on-air person, if you were running a talk radio station. Again, even though this is mostly for music, but there might be a talk PD watching this, and you might want to do that. I found though that people who do talk shows, they do not like Airchecks. They don't like to even hear their voice. They just hate it. One other thing, when you're doing an Aircheck, other than the morning where you're going over the show, that just happened that day, I think when you do an Aircheck session, a typical Aircheck session for a jock, you don't want the one from yesterday or the day before or today. You want one from 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And the reason is that they're not going to remember in any way what they were talking about. Okay, where normally if something happened the day before, they may be going like, well, what do you mean? You didn't understand what I was saying, or it wasn't clear, or it was totally clear, but they still have it fresh in their mind, whatever it was that they read, that they were talking about, or what was running through their mind. 3 weeks later, they're going to have no clue what they were talking about. And if they listen and they go, I don't know what I was talking about, or I got lost here, or I didn't fill it in entirely, they're immediately going to agree with you, because they won't be able to hear it, either. Each person is unique, and you have to handle them in a unique way, and you have to figure out what that is ideally within the first couple sessions when you're watching their body language, how they interact with you, how fast they respond to whatever you ask them to do or to keep up doing what they're doing. Did they actually start to do more of it, the positive stuff? So you really got to bear that in mind. And then there's the elephant in the room. If you're the PD, especially a new PD, like, I'm talking to you now, how good are you? Have you ever been a jock? It's really hard to air check someone and actually be good at it. If you've never been a jock yourself, I mean, that's a whole different deal. Now, some people might go, well, there's a lot of football coaches or basketball coaches or baseball or whatever that, that never made the majors. Yeah, but they probably played the sport. Okay, they probably played the sport, and that's all you really need to do. It doesn't really matter necessarily how good of a jock you were, before you became a PD, although that matters for some things, actually a lot. But as the overall, there's a different mindset when you're on the air for those people and the people who are not on the air. If you've been on the air, at least you can remember what it was like, and how fast you have to think on your feet, and how many things are going on at the same time, and it's hard to keep track of stuff, and and so on and so forth. It's just a different sort of animal, and it's very hard to air check somebody if you've never actually been that animal. You've never had to ride that lion. But here's the big one, that I want to get across for this. If you've never been a PD and you just became a PD and you've never been a jock, you may not be a good person to actually do the air check sessions. Your manager or somebody may be pushing you to do the air check sessions, but you may not actually be that person that could do it because you don't have experience doing it, for sure, and you probably, high likelihood that you don't have the ability to actually do it. And when you start to do them, you're going to be doing way more damage than any kind of help that you could ever do when doing an air check. You really have to step back and assess yourself. Am I good enough to actually do an air check? Here's an extreme example, and this would go for any PD, okay? I mean, even me, okay? I've been doing this thing, half a century, okay? If I had to air check Howard Stern, if somebody said, I need you to air check Howard Stern, and you were going to air check Howard Stern, what would you do? How would you even approach that? You know what I mean? This is sort of the stuff I'm trying to get at, in addition to just playing the tape and, stopping it and talking about it and all that usual stuff. How would you approach an air check with Howard Stern? What would you even contemplate saying? How would you attack it? How would he react to things that you're saying? Is he going to take them well? Is he not going to take them well? Is he going to be helpful? Now, I'm sure there's a way to actually talk about Howard's show to Howard. I have no doubt that there's a way to do that, and a way that he would be like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, tell me more, or oh, yeah, that's a good idea. But man, you'd have to really dig to figure out what that is, and then how to present it. The other part about it, and again, I think Howard's a great example. I don't think he'd probably even play an air check. It would be more a conversation about talking about a show or just some things. The other thing too is, somebody like Howard, and I know this with a lot of other jocks, especially ones who have been doing it a really long time and have reached the highest level of being on the air with big ratings and, and all that sort of stuff. For most PDs, and including me for a lot of people, okay, again, because, I would put myself into this category, those people are going to be over my head for many things, not everything. A lot of stuff I'm going to know better than them, but for a lot of things that got them to the top, they're doing instinctive things that they can't even put their finger on, that they don't even know how to explain it, or maybe they can explain it, and it's like, to me, it would be like, oh my God, I never thought of that. They're on a different level, operating up there for so many things that you may say, hey, well, why were you doing that? And maybe they'll explain it to you, maybe they can explain it to you. But there are areas where it's like, maybe you probably shouldn't even go up into that area because they are way over your head and you'll never really understand it. Here, Elon Musk. How many conversations could you have with Elon Musk where he leaves you in the dust? You don't even know what he's talking about. And and it's not that he's maybe super smart and super intellectual or super whatever. It's just that he has some inclinations or insight in his own mind about certain things that have never crossed your mind, and your mind will never put those pieces together. They just won't unless somebody really explains it to you, like baby talk. Okay, maybe then it will. So, you have to worry about those things. Point being of all of that is that there are different levels of people and you have to handle them differently. And that's why I think, when somebody's at really high levels and they're really, major jocks in every way, and I don't mean just major market, I mean the jock itself is a major market jock. I've seen jocks in the majors, or high medium markets where it's like they themselves are actually still back in the minors for their ability. Okay, so again, you got to figure that out. But if I was starting over, you're a new PD, you need to do air checks, and you've never been a jock and you've never done that. I've never done this, but I think I would do it this way. I would bring the jock in who, I'm going to air check, and I would have a conversation with him that's totally down to earth and not scary, and go, hey, I've never been a PD, I'm new at this, I've never really done air check sessions before. I know I need to do it. When I was a jock, I've had a couple of air check sessions done with me. I didn't like them, or I didn't get much out of them, or whatever you want to say to sort of downplay it, okay? And if you've never been on the air, I mean, great, just say, I've never had an air check session done with me because I've never been on the air. So why don't we do this, okay, Bob? Bob, can we listen to your air check, because I'm going to be learning here too, and I'm going to be learning from you, and hopefully, something will pop up or you can get some insight from me. And let's just go through and we'll go break by break, and you tell me, Bob, what you heard. And then I'm going to tell you what struck me. And then just start going through it break by break by break. I mean, I think I would do that because I would hope that, one, you become really safe to Bob, as doing an air check, you're a safe entity, and also he's now has to critically listen to his own air check if he cares at all. If they don't care, well, that's a whole different thing. But assuming that they care about their career and all that, they're going to be critically listening, probably more than they ever normally will, and also wondering what you're going to say. And if you keep it reasonably positive, along the way as you're playing naive, which you actually would be naive. Like you don't want to be the boss, you want to be like the naive person who's, throwing out things. Hopefully you'll come up with a bunch of things where, he'll say something and you agree, yeah, I'll work on that. And then listen to the next show and hopefully it'll get fixed. Some other things in some general sense. I had air check sessions in major markets where, honest to God, I am totally serious. I cannot remember any negative anything that any of the PDs ever told to me, ever. I remember the first PD when I first got to CKLW, and he did a few air check sessions, not a whole lot, but I remember walking out of them going, because I had been used to doing the brutal ones with my friends, where they're just wailing away, everybody's killing each other, and I got out of that first session and I was like, man, there was no negative at all. All he had was just positive, pump me up stuff. Oh man, that was great. Oh, wow, that was really clever. That's really funny. Hey, that was really good. Man, I like your pace. Man, you're really moving the show along. Like, it was all super nice stuff. So what was going through my mind after that? I couldn't wait to get back on the air and do more of it. Couldn't wait to get on the air to please him more by doing that stuff even more. So, bear that stuff in mind. Try to highlight the positives, downplay the negatives if there are any. In other words, if there's a bunch of negatives, maybe like pick out one on this air check, pick out the one that's maybe the worst one, skip the other minor ones. One of the things that, I can't think of his name, there's a very famous management guru guy who basically invented management as an actual career and style. He found from a ton of research and a whole bunch of other things over a myriad of companies that when you are, having discussions with an employee, okay, what you want to do is you want to figure out ahead of time what is important to you and what they do good, and what's not important and what they do bad. Okay, so in other words, if somebody's doing something bad that is important, you want to address it, okay? And you're going to have to do that. But what you won't want to do, you do not want to do is, if somebody's doing a lot of things that are important, really important, and they're doing them well, you do not want to start nitpicking on some small thing and just keep, beating it into the ground. Keep bringing it up and bringing it up and bringing it up and trying to fix this thing and ignoring those, okay? You don't want to be ignoring the good stuff. So let's just say, you have a half-hour Aircheck session, and 20 minutes of the Aircheck session is you're talking about the minor, negative stuff. What's that person going to come out of that Aircheck session with? What's their overall feel? Their overall feel is, okay, they probably didn't hear any of the positive, because what's that thing? It's like most people, you need to have 4 or 5 positives to overcome any negative that they hear. So they're only going to walk out of that sort of defeated. And if you keep doing that, I mean, you're gonna deflate somebody, and ultimately you're gonna have a problem because they're gonna be way less of a good air talent than they were when you started. And address some of the little things that you want fixed. And if they don't get to actually fix them, step back and ask yourself, does it really matter? At the end of the day, like I give you, for instance, I had a guy working for me, like I think I mentioned it in one other thing, where he used to rattle the paper all the time. He'd rattle paper while he's doing a morning show. And, I think I jokingly mentioned it one time, and, and he was still doing it. It was a habit. At the end of the day, he had great numbers. It was a funny morning show. It was entertaining. Everybody loved it. It's like, I just let it go. It's like, I don't care. Here, that's your shtick. He rattles paper. I could care less. From that point on, never mentioned it, never thought of it. It crossed my mind, and then immediately, whew, goodbye. I put it out of my mind. So, there's that. That's part of it. As I mentioned, usually the better the jock, the less Aircheck sessions, I think generally you need to do. Now, I know other PDs would think totally different, and I know there's a lot of people who do sort of like air checking, they air talent help for a living, and they would probably disagree with that. But I could go through a huge amount of awesome jocks that are, fantastic with great ratings, and they don't have air checks done for them. But what does happen is, and it's something that you're going to have to, somewhere along the way as a PD, get used to doing, because it helps really well. When somebody's really good, what you want to do is be able to get into conversations with them. Sometimes somebody will walk into your office and you just start talking about, something. Hey, I'm looking about buying a new car. What kind of car you got? Blah, 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 blah. And then you turn it to the show. Hey, yesterday, oh my God, I heard yesterday you were doing the so-and-so with that lady on the air. That was funny as hell. I was laughing my ass off. Oh, really? Yeah, blah, 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 blah. And then something that you want to address, you just casually bring it up, have a conversation about it. It's usually safe. The person isn't expecting it. There's no Aircheck session going on. You just give your thoughts and move on. Like, you don't dwell on it. You don't just keep coming back at them. You say it, talk tiny little bit about it, and move on. There's so many, I've seen so many PDs and just people in general, when they're talking to somebody about anything, they'll say what they want to say. The person maybe doesn't agree with them, or the person just half-heartedly acknowledges that they said it, but they would have heard it, but the person then comes back at them again. And that happens again, and they come back at them again and again and again. Like, in other words, like a dog with a bone, they won't let it go. You can bring it up again some other time in some other safe conversation, and that you would actually have to do, like right after the show, or maybe the day after the show, because you do need them to remember it, which is the opposite of what I had said early on. Unless it's some sort of general thing, that time doesn't matter. If I was in an upper medium market, in other words, a larger medium market, and for sure a major market, I would earmark a couple jocks who I thought could be PDs, or you just earmark a couple jocks that maybe you don't think they can be PDs, but you just want to work on them a little bit. You want to work on them in a stealth way. I would actually bring them into the office and have somebody else's air check, another jock on the staff, their air check. Okay, so there's like person A and person B. Person A isn't in the room. They're another jock on your staff, but they're not in the room, but it's their air check. Person B comes into the room and you say to them, hey, I think you have some abilities to be a PD, or I want to do an exercise. I'm just sort of curious, just for a different take of things, because I like to learn things too. would you mind doing that? I want to do an air check of Fred, Bob, okay? I want to do an air check of Fred, but I want you to do the air check. Okay, you know, would you want to do that with me? I mean, the two of us will do the air check, but I want you to do the lead. I want you to play PD on Fred, okay? Were you cool with that? More than likely, they'll say, yeah, sure. Again, they're going to go into PD mode as much as they can. They're going to be listening really critically. And I guess in a way, what you're hoping for, or not hoping for, but you know, I would be hoping for, that something that Bob's doing that you want corrected, Fred is also doing. And Bob is going to pick it out, and it's going to register in his head. But if nothing else, Bob is going to be listening to Fred's air check and going through it and hearing what you say, and you would let Bob go first. I just think it's a great learning experience for the other jock, another way of doing an air check session for Bob, even though the tape that's playing is Fred, if that makes any sense to you. If you haven't subscribed yet, by all means do that now. I'd love to have you as part of this. We're pushing up to a really close, only I think 30 subscriptions away from 1,000, which is a huge YouTube thing. I mean, to have 1,000 PDs from around the world, you know, watching this channel is pretty amazing. Love to have you be a part of it. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe right now. It's really pretty cool. And also hit that notification bell. That's the bell that when we put up another lesson, that you're going to get notified that there is a new lesson, and you know, you don't have to wait around and all that sort of stuff. I'm pretty sure the next lesson, at least I'm going to try to attempt it, is going to be to how to actually make a new format up, okay? And what's the safe zones to do that, and what's not the safe zones. And I think I'm actually going to try to put AC station and a country station together. That'll be the new format, AC and country. I've been thinking about doing this for years and years and years in real life, and I think right now is actually a perfect time to literally do it. So we'll talk about that and we'll put one together, okay? So until that next time and that next lesson, if you hit that notification bell, see ya.